Hey, you found us. We are the Four Storytellers, scratching deeper into the fabric of our lives to generate diverse stories and unique characters using our wildly individual and distinct voices. I'm Nancy J., the journalist. Next.
I'm Del Shores, the dramatist.
I'm Sydney Gilder, the amateur.
And I'm James Grady, the philosopher.
And we really hope that we are going to help you become a storyteller too, because it's so much fun, especially when you get to hear everybody's stories and think, gosh darn it, I wish I'd written that. Don't you think?
Or not. I'm so glad I didn't write that.
Thank goodness I let Del write that one.
Well, I think that we are trying to really bring our voices out, and I think we're doing a very good job of that. And this is new for all of us. I mean, Del, good grief, you've been making movies and TV shows and all sorts of things, but you're back to your novel.
I know. I started this novel in 2006. And I just had, it's like now where you just have a lot of spare time on your hands. And I was unemployed. I'd just come off of a TV show. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to write a little bit. And I started writing this. I would write it like you guys writing a chapter. I would write a chapter a day. That's how I had skipped the weekends. But, it was easy to write a chapter a day. So I'm going to start back up.
What made you decide to do it again?
You guys, I honestly, I was inspired by hearing your stories in class. I thought, I have a novel that never was finished. And during the pandemic, at the very beginning of the pandemic, I would go live on Facebook every night. And it was bedtime stories with Del Shores. And I started reading these, and people really responded to them because they're of the Sordid Lives franchise. And they are literally the stories that inspired the series. So it's kind of like when I got the series, I stopped writing them. So now I'm going to finish them. I'm going to finish the stories.
So you think from writing these, you might explore a new avenue and come out with new characters, new storylines,
No. I know I'm done with the Sordid franchise. I'm shocked that I returned to it on this level, but I do.
They have how many Fast and Furious, and you can't even make more than how many Sordid Lives?
Look, here's the problem. This is why I have to do it in novel form now, because my actors are dying. They are dropping, and so I don't have a Juanita. I don't have a Peggy anymore.
Oh.
So
also his relatives are no longer letting them meet their children. So
no, he has no. Where's the material? Where's the material?
There you go. And I know, Del, we'll hear from you, but so James, you've been writing for a long, long, long time. I mean, but you have a philosophy. You are our philosopher here.
Yes.
In a lot of different genres. I mean, I wrote academic philosophy. I write for Out and About Nashville. I do interviews with celebrities and crazy people. And, I've written a lot of fiction. Fiction was a big part of my life when I was in college and coping with grad school. So,
well, what gave you the balls to bring a book to Del's screenwriting class?
Yeah.
So actually, I wasn't welcomed into the class. I was given an opportunity when somebody dropped out to join you guys.
Wow.
And I didn't know what I was going to do. And I brought two ideas. One of them was a play, actually, not a screenplay. And the other was this. And I read a scene from the play. And then the next week I read the chapter from this. And I wanted to just see what people responded to more strongly. I kept the scene because I think it'll be a good play. But this story really grabbed hold of people, and I think just like it grabbed hold of the murderers at Riverbend Maximum Security Prison and made them turn their heads and say, "What the hell was that?"
Now that was as you were as their teacher, not as one of the inmates.
No, he was one of them.
I was
right next to them.
I was one of their teachers, but as I like to say, they specifically put my desk across the room from the panic button, and there was a whole circle of them between me and the panic button. So I was in there. I was not walking out without without going through at least a few locked doors.
But
And
it's your story that made me want to write mine, that brought Sydney into class, and also made Del delve into his background.
I dug it up. I dug it up.
So Sydney,
I always say about James' piece is that it makes my family look kind of normal and not nearly as criminal. I mean, woo! He's got
Jesus, yes. Every
I,
week.
yeah, I have no issues when I think by comparison, but
And-
I guess, but I mean, Dell was your instructor in college, a special guest at your college, Sydney. But where
yeah.
I mean, you call yourself an amateur, but I mean, listening to your story, when people hear it, they're gonna think this girl knows what she's talking about.
Well, actually, I mean, I guess when I say amateur, when it comes to the whole novel business, when it comes to writing a fully thought out, plotted, outlined, want to make sure you don't have any plot holes kind of thing, fiction, something that James has been doing for a good while. I am brand new to it. This is my very first time. Now, when I went to college, my English degree for 2 semesters was professional writing. So I always wanted to be a writer, and I was really good at it. I'm pretty good about bullshitting my way to an A. That's what I've always been able to do. And I made good money bullshitting my way to other people's A's. But writing fiction.
Oh,
Hey, look,
is there something you need to confess to your former
manicures don't pay
professor?
for themselves. Yes, all the essays that Del made me write in his acting for the
Oh yes, those. Did you write some of those plays in the playwriting class? What's crazy about Sydney is that she didn't take my writing class. She took my acting classes. So it's it's so much fun that she's doing the writing.
I studied film in college, and for my thesis for my senior year, I tried to do a short film. Jesus Christ. And I tried writing a screenplay, and I failed miserably because for me, I thrive on novels. I thrive, and as an actor, I'm saying this, I thrive on having not just the lines, but what exactly is happening between the lines, and having all the dialogue, like, why are the curtains blue? And she's sad because the curtains are blue, yada, yada, yada. I mean, I love reading scripts, but my bread and butter, my cocaine addiction is novel reading.
Can I ask all of you a question? I was an avid reader too as a kid, and I think that a lot of writers were. Were y'all all avid writers?
Readers? I was an avid reader.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I loved mysteries. It was like the Bobbsey twins were first, and then the Hardy Boys. I ran out of everything, and then so I had to my mother was a school teacher. I had her check out Nancy Drew books for me because I was too embarrassed to.
Nancy Drew books.
I started with Nancy Drew, and only when I finished the ones did I go to the Hardy Boys. I love Nancy Drew. Yeah.
She had a roadster. I mean, how can you not like a girl who does?
Amazing. She's badass.
Yeah. I think I'm going to read me a Nancy Drew book.
A little memory lane.
Yes.
Well, it's funny because when I was growing up, I really liked biographies. Clara Barton. I mean, isn't that weird? I mean, I love Clara Barton, and I can't even
make sense
of them. I mean, it kind of does, and that's why I became a journalist, I guess, because I was reading all these true stories about people.
Yeah. I read biographies too. I actually wrote my 3rd grade book report on the autobiography of Otto von Bismarck. Our elementary school library was also the town library, and so
where was this, James?
Antioch, Georgia. I actually 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade shared a teacher and a classroom. Now I need to point out, because they've talked about how long I've written, and I told that story. I am the 2nd youngest person in the room. I'm not 70.
He's 105, and he's wearing it well.
And I guess Nancy and I are battling it out for oldest.
But youngest,
you know what? We get the vaccine first.
I'm in line. All right, in line.
Well, I was a big advocate of the library. It was 2 blocks from my house, and during the summertime, I would walk there every single day. The library ladies knew me by my first name, and before I started reading the harder romance stuff, I was reading things like the Twilight, the Vampire Diaries, all that kind of stuff that CW pretty much made into a franchise. And they would save books. Like, they would get books in that they would get donated to them, but they couldn't put them on the shelves or whatever, or for some reason, so they give them to me. And so I get bags of these little young adult romance books. And of course, Supernatural was huge whenever I was a preteen. That was the big genre. I was right in between The Click and Hunger Games. I was right in between there, where werewolves and vampires and witches were sexy as all get out. But that's what I got started on. And then I would roam through the back of the romance, the adult section, where they had the bodice rippers with the shirtless Fabio on the cover, and I would open them and I would smell them. Old books are my favorite smell in the whole world.
Oh, I thought it was something else. I didn't know what. I thought there was some scratch and sniff that I didn't know about.
I went somewhere darker.
Yeah, the 3D experience in those romance novels.
Well, I will say there is just something about a book. This is not a fake background. I'm a book collector. I'm a bibliophile. I collect first editions, first printings. My oldest book in the world is late 18th century.
Oh, wow.
So
I have a lot of Tennessee Williams first editions.
Oh, wow.
But I love knowing that someone else picked this book up, or you read the inscription and this beautiful writing, and I think that a lot of people don't really know much about writers. You think that they're all sitting around writing all the time, but
typewriters.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case. James, I think you said you've talked about that before, that people are fascinated by writers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they view what happens to produce their favorite books as if it's some secret thing that happens, in some wizard's castle. But in reality, it's just hard work in a typewriter.
But you're speaking to me. That's it. When I read a book, how did she know he know that I would feel that way? That I think is what is kind of special about reading. And I don't ever want to lose books. I can't read a book on a tablet or a thingy or whatever those are.
Mm-hmm. You gotta have it. It blows my mind how I've always been envious of writers who can think about the most benign thing. Like, I'll be reading something and they'll reference something. I'm like, I had no idea what that was. Like, they have a encyclopedia of knowledge in their brains, and they just know everything, and they have all the inside jokes that they can include into their characters. That's why writers were another planet for me.
Yeah, well, for me, I always gravitate to write about characters that are not quite as smart as me, so I don't have to worry about that.
I think with that, we need to hear your story, Del.
Am I first? Am I up first?
I think
yes. Our homework assignment from Mr. James and Del last week was 350 words of a little excerpt from our books that are in the works right now.
So this is called The Sordid Saga. And this is chapter 1. And each one of my chapters is named after a character. And y'all, I have to admit to Sydney, Jacqueline Suzanne was a little bit inspirational in this, because if you remember Valley of the Dolls, it had Neely. And then it had they were all all the chapters were different, and so you return to their stories and you hear about the characters in other stories. But anyway, it sort of explains itself. This is chapter 1. It's called Peggy.
Do you want to make yourself big, sir? You start.
Yes, let's do that. I'm doing the technical stuff, and it's hard. Here we go. Okay, here we go. Okay, this is Peggy. Peggy Ingram walked into her empty house with one bag of groceries. The house, of course, wasn't really empty. There was furniture, appliances, photographs, books, all the material possessions that indicate one's history, one's past. The gathering and building of a life, but it was empty of people, except for her. She was all that was left, the last of the Mohicans, so to speak. At one time, the house was so loud, 3 lively kids. Oh, those kids. Not one of them turned out the way Peggy had hoped. Latrell was uppity. Lavonda was a loud mouth whatnot, and Brother Boy, well, she just could not think about Brother Boy, not today. It was just too depressing. In fact, she was too depressed already to think of any of her kids. She just pushed them right out of her head. There, gone, easy done. She set the groceries down on the yellow Formica counter and started to pull out the items one by one. Carton of eggs, a package of center-cut bacon, a pound of ground round, 2 cans of creamed corn, a package of frozen peas, 4 potatoes, and an Almond Joy candy bar. Oh, Lord, I forgot milk, she thought. She had thrown the half-empty carton out that very morning because it had curdled, gone sour. Adjustments. I need to make adjustments. She would have to start buying a half a gallon of milk at a time instead of a full gallon. Her husband was the one who had used most of the milk for his evening cornflakes, and now that he was dead, Peggy only used a little bit for her coffee in the morning. Come to think of it, maybe a quarter gallon was enough now. Peggy's husband, Theodore James Ingram, had died only 2 weeks ago on March 21st, 1998. Peggy had been married to Theodore just shy of 46 years, 4 years short of their golden anniversary. Golden, she thought. It's more like tarnished. She didn't cry when he died, not even at the funeral, and she knew perfectly well people were talking. She didn't even love him, she imagined him saying. They were right. And that is your teaser. Let me get all these other folks back.
I want more. Oh my gosh, that was so short.
Well, it was 366. I cheated. I added a few words. I love that. The Word document can tell you how many.
And I was rooting for the masturbation scene.
Well, you'll have to wait on that.
Stay tuned.
It's part of this chapter.
And now these will be available eventually. I know you guys now. Where will we be able to eventually get the rest of this?
Yeah.
James.
So ultimately, the plan is for each of us to launch our own storytelling podcast where we tell our story in full and provide a print version available on Amazon for purchase for people who want to follow along, read ahead, support our work.
Oh, you mean there may be some money involved?
The story will be free. The story will be free. However, some people don't like to wait. They like to binge the season, so to speak. They buy it. And, if you feel like you have some money burning in your pocket, we will be happy to be the recipients of that.
That's later. Now, I got to ask you, this is what you always ask us. How did that feel?
Oh, yeah, Del.
Oh, you know what? I always love returning to those characters. And the great Rue McClanahan played Peggy in the series. And before I even met Rue, I wrote that chapter. But now that when I read it, now I'm going to get emotional. I see Rue. I see Rue. I see Rue taking out the groceries and eating the Almond Joy, and she was such an amazing actress, but she was truly an amazing human as well.
What I love so much about what you're doing is the fact that people have fallen in love with these characters that they've known on screen, and this is what makes screen to book so beautiful, is that you don't get to have the stream of consciousness and the inner thoughts whenever you're watching a character, but whenever you get to have the book and whether it's third person or first person, you get to have a more intimate view into what they're thinking, which makes it,
But usually it's the other way around.
Yeah.
You have the book and then it goes to the screen.
Yeah. That's what it was with this. This was originally, in this form, and then it went to, but it was a play. Then so it's all over the place with sort of lives. But I love writing in this format a lot because we always say scratch deeper. And I can really scratch deep into these characters, which, they're funny characters. Most people know Sordid Lives as this funny franchise, but I mean, this gets really dark sometimes.
I love the names. Are those real names?
I always, it's so interesting you asked that question. I always steal from from life. And every now and then I run out of names, and I just go on Instagram or Facebook and I say, "Hey, Southern friends, I need some names." And but all of the ones in Sordid Lives, like Lavonda Luttrell, all of those are people that I knew growing up or heard about growing up.
Yeah. Well, actually, speaking of growing up and having stories like that, Miss Nancy J, what you're writing has to do with your actual family life, right? And people from your past.
Yeah, it's kind of a little hard to admit to that. Just, it's kind of like, what's the family going to say? And I know we'll have a discussion about that at some point. But,
Oh yeah.
but I'll tell you, when I was a little girl, my fantasy of growing up was I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to have a good marriage. I wanted to have children. I wanted to be living on water where the waves would crash against the rocks, and I'd be upstairs somewhere writing, maybe over the carriage house. So I did get a couple of marriages, but they were not good. Forgot to have kids and never did write. So then I became a reporter, and I just was, doing the truth and, covering murders and mysteries and all sorts of stuff, anchoring. And then finally, the last probably 10, 20 years of my career has been as entertainment reporter and interviewing everyone from, oh golly, Del Shores to Leonardo DiCaprio or Oprah to, it's been wonderful.
So just casually. That's who you
Michelle Obama. I mean, I love that picture of you with Michelle Obama. Nancy has interviewed everybody.
Yes, even the little monkey from Night at the Museum.
Oh my God, you saw that?
I said it to my mom. She loves that movie. Sorry.
Yeah, no. It's been, having stepped back from that now, given the pandemic. I mean, I did just interview George Clooney a few weeks ago, so we're still doing some Zoom things. But that said, stepping back from it, this is so much more real to me. The storytellers here, being able to produce our own things. And with that, I'm not sure about a title, but because I couldn't write a screenplay, I decided I best write something that I do know, which is the truth. And this is the prologue, and it's dedicated to the storytellers who share without shame, persist without pain, write without worry, and make an indelible impression. I never knew my father. Oh, not what you're thinking. My parents stayed married for nearly 71 years. Mom died first, just shy of that anniversary, and Dad died less than 3 months later. It's funny that I'm even writing about my dad. My homemaker mom was my greatest influence. My dad was kind of a madman Don Draper. Providing for the family was his main concern, followed by alcohol and women. Traveled quite a bit for work. We never wanted for anything, but it was a mother who was there. My mother was always there for me, supporting me. But the things I knew about my father always came from her. She would give me her opinion of him. She would give me her details of their arguments, his personality, even his family she'd talk about. She must have been in love with him at some point, but there was always this underlying vitriol when she spoke of him. But she eventually forgot the punches, the fights, the ugliness. As long as I can remember, my mother told me she was going to divorce my father as soon as I graduated from high school. Promise? I remember asking so many times. But now, as I plow through the pictures and letters and zingy-bingy that I threw into boxes after selling their house, I didn't get the entire story of this man. There's no one left to ask or correct my assumptions. My sister and I don't remember things the same way, and being 9 years older, she pretty much left for college and never looked back. So as I pieced together my father, first-generation American, highly decorated bomber fighter pilot in World War II, miserly but still provided for his daughters even after his death, perhaps death indeed becomes him. Be that as it may, his favorite 5 words, but it's my mother's voice that still resonates. I thought I was marrying a Greek god, but I married a goddamn Greek.
Yay!
Well, thank you for the bow.
I love it. Yes, I've been watching The Crown.
was very queenly.
That was fantastic,
Yeah.
Nancy. I love that area, and I love the honesty, and how you get into the mindset of your mom, who you knew so well. And what I really love about your piece is there's something very interesting to me about telling the stories of people that we thought we knew, and we actually don't really know them until we tell their stories, and that's how we get acquainted with them.
Yeah.
So,
And I do, I had writing about them like this, and especially reading it out loud. I've never told anyone other than the storytellers, our group, seriously, these stories before, ever. And it's yeah, you can say it's cathartic, but it's also, I see it differently now too as a grown up.
Yeah.
It's nice to be able to look back and say, wow, that's what I felt then. But I kind of get some of these things. So anyway.
If I can say, the thing that I find masterful about Nancy's telling of these stories is that it's what I aspire to. Your father is a character that I don't enjoy, and yet we come to like him in these very strange ways, and I think that's just fabulous.
Oh, I so agree. I so agree with that. There was one, and I'm not to be a spoiler on any level, but there was one where that he did such an act of kindness in an episode. I say an episode in a chapter that it just, I go, oh my God, I do like him. I so agree with that. That's because you're that guy. You're that guy in our group, James, the philosopher. You're the philosopher.
What I'm like addicted to when it comes to Nancy's writing is those little lines. Like what's the very last line that you say, and she does this very often with her writing, is she can compress so much emotion and thought into a witty little like comical line, like something about the Greek. What's the Greek line?
I thought I was marrying a Greek god, but I married a goddamn Greek.
Yeah, it's like that, and it's like so. I love those things. Something that you could see as a headline or something that little excerpts taken out, and you do it so well, and it's sentimental and beautiful, and what makes it so wonderful to hear. It's like ear candy for me.
Well, thank you, and again, I have, as Della said, these can kind of stand alone, and I try to get a lesson in each one. I try to have learned something from each episode. I don't know, what do we call them, James? Come on, what would the philosopher call each
chapter?
Chapter.
Right?
I like episode personally.
Okay.
Yeah, especially for you and Dell, because yours stand alone so much. You don't have to have a through line between them.
Ooh, a through line.
Look at my $10 words.
Well, she did get that education. She picked up that degree on Zoom.
Finished it. Thank you, WebEx and Zoom.
Well, I think it's time to go to James. What do you think?
Oh dear.
Yes. Someone get
All
your
right, y'all. I just get a drink and a cigarette, and here we go.
Well, and get a pack of cigarette, because we still got Sydney, right?
That's right. Oh, that's right. You'll end with I guess a good stiff drink for James and a cigarette for Sydney. All right, James.
This is just like my life. No foreplay. We're not gonna do any of these fun questions. It's just straight to the action. Okay. All right.
No, James, no.
Like Dell and Nancy, James, you are taking from your life.
Yes, TED Talk.
Like, this is not just pulled out of your ass. This is like things that you have heard and through people that you love and lived with and have known your entire life experienced. So like,
everybody in my story, I knew the person that inspired this telling. And like I told the class, there are these signpost moments where the thing actually happened exactly the way I tell it, and then I have to string together these episodes that I heard about with storytelling. And so it's 90% fiction, but I would challenge anybody, read this and tell me the parts that were true, and you would always pick wrong, because the craziest ones are the true ones.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I like when you told that story. I mean, Farrah Fawcett, the burning bed has nothing on James Grady's life.
Oh, yes.
And what I liked about, I referenced that because you told that story, and that is not even in there, but it informed so much about that family and that mother.
Yes.
That you write about. You go, oh shoot, because it's as bad as it gets. It never gets as bad as the stories you've told us that were really real.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
I always, and I always struggled because I wanted to tell this story for years. And the thing about it was, I felt like nobody would believe it. It's too unbelievable a story to tell and entertain people, because they say don't challenge people's credibility, don't their ability to believe what you're saying. And I think I dial it back so much in order to make it credible.
That's what kind of reminds me, every time you read in class, I almost see the credits rolling, and it's like slowly on the screen, based on a true story, and everyone gets the chills. That's what I feel when you read. Like after watching a horror movie. Ugh. Okay.
It would have to say inspired by a true story.
Inspired by a true story.
Inspired by a true
Do
story.
you have a title for this book yet?
I really don't. I have a feeling that the last chapter will get written and that the title will be there.
Hopefully, fingers crossed. So give
us
350 cents.
All right. I'm going to give myself a few extra, but yeah, it'll be close.
351 cents.
I had 20 less words. You got them.
All right. As the days began to drag on in an endless return of the same, Betty refused to allow herself to become complacent, so it did not come as a surprise to her when the inevitable came. A group of men crested the hill and approached the cabin on the outcropping, their laughter ringing ahead of them. It was early afternoon, and Mary was outside with her girls. "Barbara, take your little sisters down to the creek for a few hours," Mary said. "Your sister and I have some business to attend to." Barbara looked at Betty, whose back was rigid and face transfixed by something distant that neither Barbara nor Mary could perceive. "Your sister ain't your concern," Mary barked at Barbara before Betty could say anything. "Now get." Betty heard something different in Barbara's voice, kinder and more afraid than she'd ever heard before, as her sister marshaled the young ones for a trip down the side of the mountain to the creek at the foot of the abyss. When the other girls were out of earshot, Mary said, "It's time to earn your keep, girl." With a horrible laugh, she added, "Maybe you'll learn you ain't got nothing to be proud of today." Betty stared at her mother's back in silent horror as she walked out to meet the three approaching men with a broad wave. Betty couldn't hear the conversation even when the men had drawn near Mary, but she could feel their eyes on her as her skin crawled. Then her mother motioned for her to follow them inside. Mary held the door open for the men, who went inside and sat down. Betty stopped in front of her mother and said, "I won't do this." Mary sneered at her eldest and shook her head. "Then leave. I won't stop you. Walk off this mountain. I got 3 more." Betty wanted to curse her mother, but she raged silently. She didn't yet know how she'd survive, and even if she did manage, her sisters would pay the price. Betty entered, closing the door behind her, and glared, telegraphing her hatred at the woman, who merely laughed and started plying the men with liquor as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Stop standing there like a rock, girl, and go grab a jug of hooch for the boys," Mary said, all joviality for her clientele. Betty went to the cabinet and grabbed the liquor and a few water-spotted glasses, dutifully placing them on the table and retreating, but not before one of the men pawed at her, braying like a donkey when she jumped back from him. "She ain't been around men much, have she?" the oldest of the three asked with a leer. And that's it for today.
You know what, James? We know the other chapters. We've heard this. I can't wait till everyone else can hear this.
It's returning to them. Just returning to that snippet. Because we love Betty so much now, and just to remember that turning point. Oh.
This is it. This is the moment where it.
Yeah.
How deep are you into the story now? Like, you were almost finished, right?
I am. I'm 300 pages in.
Hi, Kavolt.
That's a lot. That's a lot of pages.
It is. That's why I'm going to read it to everybody.
Ooh, that's a lot.
It's going to be, wait
We're
till
going to have it's not a dance-a-thon, it's a James Read-a-thon. Join us from 12 a.m. to 12 p.m.
I know. So you're so far along, so much further along than the rest of us, though. Do you even see a cover? Do you know what the cover might look like?
In my imagination, it's a mountainside cabin with a girl standing at the edge of the cliff.
Oh, he's like so close to the real thing. Like he's so close. Oh,
Yeah, that's
so exciting.
And not to spoil, there's a scene very much like that.
Yeah. And so, like for me, I was last to join the class. So whenever James releases something new, or I hear a little bit, like whenever he read to us in a few of his first chapters, I'm just now learning and filling in the blanks. And so I'm really excited for your podcast to come out so I can get the full story instead of just what I've been getting so far. I'll be your number one.
I'll pay for it. I'll pay for it.
Thank you.
We all get signed copies.
It's so good, James, and I've told you this in class so many times. I just see it as like a limited series. I mean, just like I feel like it could be 10 episodes, and it would just be talking about it. So I'm excited for you. This is really, it's rich. It's so rich.
The thing that's special to me about this story is that the real inspiration for it has also inspired nearly every aspect of my life. I mean, when I went into philosophy, my real focus was on why people do bad things. Where does evil come from? And it's what drove me into prison. It's the reason that I went into prison to teach that class was I wanted to be around the kind of people who did the kind of things that my family did. And
got away with.
And my family got away with. And so I walked into a room with 12 murderers, and they were horrified by the stories that I told. And so I didn't get any closer to the answers.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure that this has been cathartic for you, though, in a way.
Yeah.
It has.
Writing is therapy. That's something that we keep saying, but it's so true. It's so true. Yeah.
Well, Sydney, I think you're gonna to bring us on home tonight, right?
Yes, that's our tradition. Normally,
she's gonna bring it up the rear, so to speak.
And I'll just have to tell everybody in our.
I was going to say sweet dreams, but that's okay. James, you take it.
Yes, he did. He took it.
My romance novel is based on the most true events ever of my entire life.
So every class, I have to tell everybody that's watching, every class, we almost always end with, we used to end with James, and then we just thought, oh, we gotta get James earlier on because we're so depressed. And then Sydney came into class, and our rule is that we can go for a drink and listen to Sydney Gildner as she does her romance. So tell us a little.
Yeah, I mean, it's a romance novel, but it's pretty true to, I think, what girls kind of think about these days.
Yeah, so I mentioned a little bit about it in our last episode, but what I'm doing with this is coming at it from a more feminist standpoint. You know, from where I was when I was 10 years old starting to read these books, and where I am now is very different about how I think about gender and how I think about women and female empowerment, and how feminist is not just a dirty word anymore. But I wanted to I've always wanted, I look for it. And then if I find a book like that, I become addicted to the author. A book that has a female character that's really thought out, and she is well written, and she has a conscience of her own, and she doesn't become a brand new human being because a man falls into her life. And I think it's a tricky thing to balance, because you are dealing with fantasy when you write romance novels, because if we were to have real sex scenes written out in a book, it would be 30 million pages long, because it takes that long.
Well, for some men.
For some.
I think some of those chapters could be short.
Not mine.
I love this portion of the night. But yeah, that's what I wanted. I wanted to have characters who were diverse, not just in who they are as human beings, but how they think. I wanted to have a female character I love goofy female characters. I will admit I'm addicted to that trope. So I do have some tropes in it. Like I follow some of those romance novels tropes that we fall in love with, that we get addicted to. But I just wanted it to be a bit more educated romance novel. I didn't want it to be something that you walk away feeling guilty about. I mean, guilty, maybe because you're reading erotic romance, but not guilty because you just read about a abusive man taking power over a woman, which is so popular. Whether you're reading straight or gay or any type of sexuality in a book, that's normally the kind of trope you have to deal with. But my 350 cents today comes from chapter 1, a little excerpt, and I wanted to introduce you guys to my leading man, my main man, who is a figment of my imagination. Now that I'm a few feet away, I can take in precisely how fucking gorgeous he is. I mean, fuck, I knocked over that. Chocolate brown hair waving with impeccable cowlicks, begging to be combed through with a lover's fingers. A dark 5 o'clock shadow that accentuates how strong his jaw is, igniting curiosity of what it would feel like against my skin. A crisp white smile that practically blinds you, and that skin has a kind of natural tan you'll never find in a bottle, only genetics. And when he opens his eyes, I'm a goner. Is that a choir of angels I hear? Striking, ethereal blue eyes that, I kid you not, actually sparkle. It's like gazing into the blue lake in New Zealand, not an imperfection in sight. There are bright swirls of cornflower blue highlighting his irises and a ring of deep sapphire outlining the edges. If Pantone got their hands on them, they'd have the color of the century. This is a Kodak moment if I ever saw one. The kind of image that teenage girls are desperate to have hanging on their wall. I know that I was. Damn it, I wish I had my camera. A naughty dream to dissect on my computer, adjust the color temperature, color match here, highlight there, enhance some of his rough edges. Lost in his spell, I didn't notice that his lips are moving, trying to communicate something. His words are lost in the roar of the crowd. What? I struggled to snap my brain back into existence. Are you all right? Oh, for the love of God, as if he can't be more perfect. This living Adonis has the only accent that could literally knock me dead. Italian. I'm now a puddle of denim and resurfacing teenage hormones. There you go. A short little snippety doodah.
Gosh darn it, I'm so used to more.
I
More.
I didn't want to give it all away,
I know. I was just getting into it. I didn't even have my finger on the button to get us all back in the room together. That was fantastic. I was like, okay, see why we need cigarettes? Actually, 28 years ago. More than
So I want to hop in and just say, Sydney, your goal is to write sort of smart feminist romance. And one of the things that I like about it, as a member of the LGBT community, is that you have also you have strong LGBT representation in your writing, and it's both embracing some of our common tropes of characters, but also you go way beyond a stereotypical character.
Well, I guess I can say that I pull from my life. I mean, I grew up in theater. I grew up in the theater department of my college. And so I was surrounded by people of different genders, different sexualities, different ethnicities. And so I just can't imagine not having those characters. Especially, I wanted to make sure that when I read romance novels, more often than not, they are white-based and straight-based. But that's not how the world works. That's not how any world works if you're open and loving to the people around you. But I do have her best friend is a gay man who is married, and then her other best friend is a pansexual woman who is discovering her love life. And these characters are very important to me because they're human beings, and that's just who they are. And I wanted to make sure that when I wrote them, it's not my job to write a character discovering their sexuality as a straight woman myself. but it is my job to make sure that they are included within the life of my character and to have them be a part of this and not have it as a trope or a stereotype. At least that's what I'm trying to do. I hope that I can achieve that goal, because that's feminism. That's intersectional feminism, which is really important.
You're doing it. I say you're doing it.
Fabulous job. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
Wow. So how do we all feel about this? What was it like reading it out loud to us?
Now to you guys.
Slicing down to 350 words was very difficult. I mean, my story wants to tell itself, and I know that you guys' stories wanted to come out as well. So cutting them off very unnaturally there was very difficult. But
I think that's the goal. We wanted more, and we hope that you wanted more. I wanted more with each one of you, so I hope
I did too. I did too. So that's why we're here, so that you can get more eventually, right?
And what I love so much is that all of our stories, not only are they diverse in what they're about, but also our individual voices reading them are so different. We all have different reading styles. And I guess you can hear the passion in our voices when we read them, because it draws you in. That's something else that draws you in. It's not just an audio book. It's not just, a trained actor reading from a script. It's us reading our work, which is something that I know a lot of writers struggle with. Some of them really like to be behind the scenes writing. They don't want to be reading.
But I think it goes back to what Del has been telling us as the four storytellers, also in class, is being able to have other people be there for you. Accountability.
Accountability.
That is. And that's what everyone needs. And reading out loud, I think, is really important too.
So important.
I think it's great, but you know what? If you ultimately have a story to tell and you have an issue with reading out loud to others, have someone else read it for you.
Yeah.
And don't. What I'm saying is, tell your story. Tell your story. Because look what happened here. So
maybe we should do that sometime. Read a chapter from each other's stories.
Oh, that would be very interesting.
That's a good idea.
That would be
Shall we do it again? Shall we regroup at another time?
Yes, because it's time for me to get some more wine.